It was close to 2:30 in the morning when Sarah woke up to the sound of knocking. At first, she thought she had dreamed it. The room was still. Her window was cracked open, and the cool night air drifted in. She lived alone in a small one-bedroom apartment on the edge of town, so any sound outside her door at that hour felt wrong. The knocking came again. 3 slow, heavy thuds. Sarah sat up in bed, her chest tightening. She checked her phone. No missed calls, no texts. Nobody she knew would visit her at this time. She told herself it was probably a neighbor, maybe drunk, maybe lost. But deep down, she felt something colder, a sense that this was deliberate. She slipped out of bed, careful not to make the floor creak, and tiptoed to the door. She didn't switch on the lights. Through the peephole, she saw nothing, just the dim glow of the hallway light stretching across the doorframe. Then came a whisper. Sarah. Her blood turned to ice. Whoever was outside not only knew her name, but was speaking it softly, as though coaxing her to open the door. She stumbled back, her mind racing. None of her friends would play a joke like this. She grabbed her phone, ready to call the police, but froze again when the knocking turned into scratching. Long, deliberate drags of fingernails or claws across her door. Sarah's voice trembled as she forced herself to speak through the closed door. "Who's there?" The scratching stopped. Silence. For a moment she thought maybe it was over. Maybe they had left. And then the voice returned, lower this time, almost growling. "Let me in." Sarah's heart pounded so loud she thought it would give her away. She dialed 911, whispering into the phone that someone was at her door. The dispatcher told her to stay calm, stay on the line, and that officers were already on the way. But before she could even breathe a sigh of relief, the knocking grew violent, fists hammering against the wood, shaking the frame so hard she thought it would splinter. She backed into the kitchen, clutching a knife, her phone pressed against her ear. "Ma'am, stay where you are," the dispatcher said firmly. "Don't open the door." As if in response, the pounding stopped. The silence was worse. Sarah strained her ears. The only sound was the faint hum of her refrigerator. She thought maybe the intruder had left. Maybe they'd gotten scared off when she made the call. She took one shaky step forward, then another. She couldn't resist checking the peephole again. This time, something was there. A face. But it wasn't pressed close to the glass. It was just far enough back that the details were blurred. A pale, almost gray face with dark eyes that didn't blink. The lips curled slowly into a smile before the figure leaned out of view. Sarah screamed. "Stay calm, ma'am. Officers are outside your building now," the dispatcher said. Within minutes, there was a knock again. This one was different. Firm, professional. "Police!" A man's voice called. Sarah rushed to the door, but she hesitated. What if it was still him, mimicking another voice? "Ma'am, it's the police. Open up." She cracked the door just enough to see 2 uniformed officers standing in the hall. She let them in, her hand still shaking around the knife. They searched the hallways, the stairwell, even the roof access. Nothing. No signs of forced entry, no strange footprints, no one wandering the building. One officer assured her, "Sometimes people mess around at night, especially if they know where someone lives. But we'll patrol the area tonight. Keep your phone close." When they left, Sarah locked the door with every bolt and chain she had. But she couldn't shake the memory of that smile staring back at her. She didn't sleep the rest of the night. And for weeks after, every time she closed her eyes, she swore she could still hear that voice whispering through the door. "Let me in." If you were Sarah, would you have opened the door to check, or stayed frozen in your room until the police arrived? Comment below what you would have done. Jason had always been a heavy sleeper. He worked long hours at the hospital as a nurse. So when he came home and crashed into bed, nothing usually woke him. But one night, just after 3:15 a.m., something snapped him awake in an instant. At first, he thought it was a dream. His eyes were still adjusting to the dark, but he felt it, an unmistakable sensation that someone was standing in his room, watching him. The apartment was silent. No cars outside, no neighbors stomping upstairs. Yet the air was thick, like the silence itself was pressing against his ears. Jason kept still, his eyes darting to the corner of the room, and then he saw it, a shape. At the foot of his bed stood a tall, shadowy figure, not moving, not breathing, just there. Jason's stomach dropped. He wanted to sit up, switch on the light, anything, but his body refused to move. He lay there frozen, his mind racing between "it's just my imagination" and "I'm not alone." Minutes crawled by. The shadow didn't fade, didn't shift with the light. It was solid, darker than the rest of the room. Finally, Jason forced himself to speak, his voice cracking. "Who's there?" No answer. His hand inched toward the nightstand where his phone was charging. The shadow twitched, not a full movement, just the slightest tilt of its head, as though acknowledging him. Jason's throat went dry. He yanked the phone off the charger, the screen lighting up his face. In that brief glow, the shadow seemed to melt into the wall, vanishing, as if it had never been there. He bolted upright and flicked on the lamp. The room was empty. Jason laughed nervously to himself, trying to explain it away. "Sleep paralysis," he muttered. He'd heard of it before. Hallucinations when your body is half asleep. That had to be it. Except when he glanced at his phone, the screen froze him cold. 3:33 a.m., and in the reflection of the black screen, behind his shoulder, stood the same shadowy figure, closer now. Jason spun around, knife-sharp fear cutting through him. The room was still empty, but the reflection had shown something that wasn't there. For the next week, Jason barely slept. Every night, around the same time, he woke up with the same feeling. Some nights, he'd see nothing. Other nights, the shadow returned, always at the foot of his bed, always silent. He confided in a co-worker at the hospital who was deeply religious. She told him to keep a Bible near his bed, that sometimes spirits lingered in places they shouldn't. Jason wasn't religious, but desperation made him try. He left the Bible on his nightstand, hoping it would ease his mind. That night, he fell asleep faster than usual. At exactly 3:33 a.m., he woke again. This time, the figure wasn't at the foot of the bed. It was crouched low, its head level with his pillow, inches from his face. Jason screamed and jumped out of bed, the lamp crashing to the floor. He bolted into the hallway, his heart slamming against his ribs. But when he turned back, the bedroom was empty. No shadow, nothing. Shaking, Jason spent the rest of the night in his car, engine running, headlights glaring at the dark. Eventually, he moved out of that apartment. But he told his friends something that still gives them chills. No matter where he moved afterward, every now and then, he would still wake at 3:33 a.m. And sometimes, just sometimes, he swore he could still see the outline of a shadow waiting in the corner. Would you chalk this up to sleep paralysis? Or do you think Jason was dealing with something paranormal? Comment your thoughts. Because if this happened to you, could you really sleep again? It was past midnight when Emily finally shut her laptop. She lived in a small house on the edge of a forest, quiet and isolated, perfect for her freelance work. She loved the peace of it until that night. As she poured herself a glass of water, she heard it, a sound drifting through the trees. At first, she thought it was the wind. But then it came again, clearer this time, a child crying. Emily froze. She set her glass down, listening hard. The cries were faint, but they carried a raw, panicked edge, like a little girl lost and desperate for help. She grabbed her phone and walked to the back porch, straining her ears. "Hello?" she called into the dark. The crying stopped. Emily's chest tightened. She told herself maybe it was a fox or some other animal. They sometimes made strange noises at night. She was just about to head back inside when the cry started again. Closer now. It was unmistakably human. Her instincts screamed at her to stay inside, but what if a child really was out there? She grabbed a flashlight and stepped off the porch. "Hello? Do you need help?" The beam of light cut across the trees. Branches swayed gently, leaves whispering, but no movement. Still, the sound came again, pulling her deeper into the woods. Her breath clouded in the cold air as she followed. The cries grew louder, more frantic, guiding her like breadcrumbs. "I'm coming," she shouted, her voice trembling. She walked for what felt like 15 minutes when she realized something was wrong. Her porch light was gone. The house was no longer in sight. She spun in circles, the flashlight shaking in her hand. The crying continued, but it was different now. Not desperate, mocking. The voice repeated the same 3 words over and over. "Help me, help me, help me." Her heart hammered. She backed up slowly, trying to retrace her steps, when her beam caught something between the trees. 2 eyes, low to the ground, glowing. Emily gasped and dropped the flashlight. Scrambling to pick it up, her hand brushed cold, damp earth. When she lifted the beam again, the eyes were gone. The crying had stopped. And then, from directly behind her ear, the same voice whispered, "Help me!" Emily screamed and bolted, crashing through the undergrowth, branches clawing at her arms and face. She didn't know where she was running, just that she had to get away. After what felt like forever, her foot struck solid wood. Her porch steps. She staggered up them, burst into her house, and slammed the door, locking it tight. Her chest heaved as she backed away, but the sound outside started again, knocking. First soft, then harder. A child's voice, muffled through the wood. "Let me in, please, help me." Emily grabbed the phone with shaking hands and called the police. When officers arrived, they searched the woods thoroughly. No child, no footprints, nothing. One officer told her quietly as they left, "This isn't the first call we've had from people near these woods. Whatever you heard, it happens often." Emily never went outside at night again. And sometimes, when she's lying in bed, she swears she can still hear that little voice drifting through the trees. "Help me." If you heard a child crying in the woods at 2 a.m., would you go looking? Or would you lock your doors and call the police? Let me know, because some cries for help aren't what they seem. Ryan was a night owl. His job as a graphic designer kept him up late, often until 2 or 3 in the morning. He liked the quiet hours, the glow of his computer screen, and the hum of his headphones. But one night, while working in his ground floor apartment, he felt something he couldn't explain, like eyes on him. At first, he ignored it, probably paranoia from too much coffee and too little sleep. He stretched, rubbed his eyes, and got back to work. Then it happened. A sharp tap on the glass. Ryan froze. His desk faced a large sliding window that looked out into the small backyard. The blinds were half open, just enough for him to see the darkness outside. He leaned closer, squinting through the gap. Nothing, just his own reflection staring back. "Relax," he whispered to himself. "Probably a branch." He slipped his headphones back on and continued designing. Minutes later, another tap, louder. This time, followed by a dragging sound like fingernails across glass. Ryan's pulse spiked. He slowly turned his head. Through the blinds, a face stared back at him. Pale skin, hollow eyes. The features were distorted by the reflection, but there was no mistaking it. Someone was standing outside watching him. Ryan ripped off his headphones and stumbled back from the desk. His phone lay charging in the kitchen. He sprinted for it, hands trembling as he dialed 911. The operator asked for his address and told him to stay inside, to avoid the windows. But even as he moved to the hallway, he heard it, the soft creak of the sliding door handle being tested. Someone was trying to get in. Ryan grabbed a kitchen knife and crouched behind the counter, whispering updates into the phone. He's still out there. He's at the door. Please hurry. The operator's voice stayed calm. Officers are on the way. Stay where you are. Silence. Ryan dared to peek around the corner. The figure was gone. The backyard was empty again, the blind swaying slightly as though touched. He held his breath. Maybe the intruder had left. Maybe he was safe. Then came a new sound, a voice, right outside the window, low and mocking. I can see you. Ryan nearly dropped the phone. His heart pounded so hard it hurt. He ducked lower, gripping the knife, whispering into the receiver. He knows I'm here. He's talking to me. Stay hidden, the operator instructed. Officers are seconds away. The doorknob rattled violently now, then banging, fists hammering against the glass. Ryan's fear boiled over into panic. He wanted to run, to get out. But where could he go? Finally, red and blue lights flashed outside the blinds. A loud shout, "Police! Step away from the house!" The banging stopped. Ryan stayed crouched, waiting for the officers to signal. When they knocked on the door, announcing themselves, he ran to open it. Two uniformed officers rushed in, checking every corner of the apartment and the backyard. Nothing, no footprints in the grass, no sign of forced entry. The officers reassured him they would patrol the area, but admitted they had seen no one leaving the property. Ryan didn't sleep that night, and though he moved apartments a month later, he confessed to a friend that sometimes, while working late at his new place, he still felt the same sensation, that someone was just beyond the glass, staring in, and every so often, he swears, he hears a faint tap. If you saw a face staring at you through your window in the middle of the night, would you freeze, fight, or run? Drop your answer in the comments, because sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones who don't need to break in to terrify you. Maya worked late shifts at a call center. By the time she got home, it was usually after midnight. She liked to unwind by scrolling her phone in bed before falling asleep. One night at 12:47 a.m., her phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her swipe to answer. Hello? Static. Then a faint voice, barely audible. Maya, her stomach dropped. She hadn't given her number to anyone outside her small circle of friends and co-workers. Who is this? She asked. The voice crackled through again, whispering, Look outside. Maya sat up in bed, her breath catching. Her window looked out onto the street below. The blinds were down, but the faint glow of headlights leaked through. Slowly, she got up and pulled them apart. Her blood ran cold. Across the street, under the flickering street lamp, stood a man, perfectly still, facing her window. He raised his hand slowly and waved. Maya dropped the blinds, heart slamming against her ribs. She scrambled for her phone, but the call had already ended. When she tried calling back, it went straight to a deadline. Minutes crawled by. She sat in silence, clutching her phone, knife-sharp fear gnawing at her. Finally, she dared to peek again. The man was gone. She exhaled shakily, convincing herself it was a prank. Maybe someone had gotten her number online. Maybe it was just coincidence. But at 2:03 a.m., the phone rang again. Same unknown number. Her hand shook as she answered. "What do you want?" The voice came clearer this time, harsh and deliberate. Coming upstairs, Maya froze. She lived on the 3rd floor. Nobody should even know which apartment was hers. She grabbed a baseball bat she kept by the bed and backed toward the door, phone still pressed to her ear. The voice whispered again. Almost there. A loud creak echoed in the hallway outside her door. Heavy footsteps climbing the last flight of stairs. Maya's heart raced. She dialed 911 on her other phone, whispering into it while keeping the call with the stranger open. The dispatcher told her to stay calm. Officers were already on the way, but the footsteps stopped right outside her door. And through the phone, she heard it. The sound of breathing, not from the hallway, from the other end of the line. Perfectly in sync. Whoever was outside her door was the one calling her. The doorknob rattled, slowly, then harder. Maya raised the bat, her entire body trembling. "Leave me alone," she shouted. The voice whispered one last time through the phone. Too late. Then, banging, violent, thunderous pounding that shook the frame. Maya screamed, pressing herself against the wall. And then, silence. Red and blue lights flooded the windows. Seconds later, police stormed the hallway. When they opened the door, they found Maya pale, shaking, clutching the bat like her life depended on it. The officers searched the building top to bottom. Stairwells, rooftops, basements, nothing, no intruder, no sign anyone had been there. But when they checked her call log, 6 missed calls sat there, all from the same unknown number. The strangest part, the number traced back to a phone that had been deactivated 2 years earlier. The registered owner, a man who had lived in the same apartment building until he was found dead in his unit late one night under mysterious circumstances. Maya never answered an unknown call again, and she moved out within the month. But sometimes, when her phone rings in the middle of the night, her chest still tightens, waiting to hear that same whisper coming upstairs. If your phone rang at 2 a.m. from an unknown number, would you answer or would you let it ring? Share your thoughts, because sometimes the scariest voices don't come from strangers. They come from somewhere far worse.